right, today we're heading over to 72nd Street, 72nd in Columbus, and for a meeting. But I think it's a good opportunity to talk through the Columbus Avenue protected bike lane, which I'll be taking straight down. This is a terrible intersection. I'm not sure if you knew if I reminded everyone from yesterday. But I'll say it every time. Here you have some trucks just, parked in the middle of the street. But it's a 5-lane, 4-lane, well, basically really like 6 lanes because of the parking. 6, 7 lanes, unclear. I'm gonna try to make this. Oh, motherfucker. Oh, this is gonna be shitty. So they tore up the pavement here. That's great. Oh, this is going to be a pretty shitty ride, at least for part of it. So this is really uneven surface. Oh, maybe it clears up over there. One bit of trivia that I didn't know is cyclists were the ones that first demanded flat, smooth roads because you needed them in the early, 1900s when cycling started to take off. But the roads were really shitty messes of dirt or whatever. And not like smooth pavement. And so it was the cycling clubs that petitioned or campaigned for them so that they could ride. And then they just took over. So here you got construction going on. It's obviously the bike lane. Not only the bike lane, but also the crosswalk. But I think there's obviously no detour or anything they've set up to support street users who are not in cars, who want to actually cross the street or bike. It's just impediments after impediments, obstacles after obstacles. And that's largely what construction is. It's just an opportunity to have more obstacles in the way. I don't even know if there's a law that says that if you're going to put crap in the way of a bike lane, you're required to provide a safe detour. That certainly is the case in places like the Netherlands, where they take safety pretty seriously, and it's just like standard. It's not a complicated thing. It's kind of like, you would expect or require people to wear safety helmets if they're on a work site. It's just another requirement, and it's literally like putting out some cones and a sign that says bike lane this way. And I would argue in a lot of cases it probably doesn't even make it that much safer. Like, it's probably not the least safe thing to just have obstacles like that, because they're sort of big and obvious. But I think there's a big element here, which is that when you bike around the city, you do feel like everything is designed, or a lot of things are kind of designed not with your best interests. Not really, it's a pretty hostile environment. What does it say? It's extremely hostile. Everywhere you have cars turning, you have potholes, all the things that I said before. I'll keep complaining, but another time. But I think what's really, really valuable, at least for the community, is to have some visibility of where improvements are being made. And even small things like a construction site that has a bike lane detour, right, set up. Like even small things like a UPS truck that's parked just outside the painted bike lane is like meaningful. You can see people tweet pictures of this stuff. They notice it. And they're tiny things. These are really small things, relatively speaking, for the workers to do. But they really do mean a lot. And when you see these kinds of improvements, it feels like you're being heard. The city is a little less hostile for you. Obviously, I'm saying that while I'm standing on a really nice, pretty nice protected bike lane up down Columbus. But it's like when you're sitting in a subway car and it's not moving and you're just miserable, and just even minor things can make you feel like, oh, I've been heard. This is an awful experience, but somebody's doing something. They're improving some tiny thing. They fixed the turnstile. The alarm doesn't ring anymore every time you open the emergency door, or now it does in some cases. They brought it back. It's a fare evasion, which is bullshit. But in any case, these are kind of like minor changes, right? To turn on or off an alarm. But when you're riding that subway every day, you notice it. You notice when, like a curb cut, like one of these, is a smooth, smooth and good for your stroller or your wheelchair or whatever. But those are kind of the minor improvements you can make. Unlike what we're about to see, which is a cop parked directly in the bike lane. Which, like, God knows what's going on here. This is the opposite. They must be in an emergency right now, because they were able to drive through there and park in the bike lane. 4328 SUV is nobody in the police car, so whatever. But those are the kinds of things, when you see that, you're like, yeah, like cops are really not looking out for us. Another thing about these bike lanes is they have these mixing zones. They call them mixing zones. Like, they're very comfortable and people just mix and say hello to one another. This right here, right? So it's where the driving lane on the left merges with the bike lane so that the drivers can then make a left turn. Really all that ends up happening is massive failure to yield, massive intersection bullying. When there's traffic, when the cars are backed up, they're just straight up cars just blocking the entire bike lane with no repercussion. So here this guy is actually looking super nice, super helpful. That's kind of how it should be. But again, you don't want to depend on people's individual behavior to do these things. You need visual cues. You need design that instructs people, hey, there are cyclists coming. And that's what like protected intersections are, where you have to make a 90-degree turn. That's what these kind of bulb outs are. So you can imagine this right here, this concrete island or median. But what if you had this configuration, both of these sides, on every intersection, right? Everywhere. Not just every other street where this, you know, insane guy is driving, but you had them much closer to each other, so they could only pass one car at a time. The car could only go kind of at a modest speed. And you had them on the left turn signals as well. So up here, imagine an island, concrete island over here. It would force all the drivers to turn around it and then make a safe left turn or right turn into the bike lane at a 90-degree or 45-degree angle, maybe, you know, a sharper angle, like more of a straight in, which makes it much easier for them to look to their left and see cyclists and wait for them to pass. And you notice that for drivers that are really aware, that's what they do. For drivers that couldn't give two shits, they just use the merge lane kind of the way it is laid out. They just sort of go right into it, ignore everything, and make a left turn. And that's where things are really unsafe. Let's see, here we are at 83rd. This whole thing, like, look how much space there is. Imagine that you had concrete dividers or little on these lines here. Imagine that instead of paint over here, it was concrete, just like a little concrete curve that, yeah, it won't ruin your car if you go over it, but certainly would remind you this is not a place to drive over, don't speed through here, that kind of thing. We just like to throw paint down. Everything is just like paint and then let it all fade, and then it's a free-for-all for everybody to do whatever they want. That's basically what happens. It's like, well, we hope that you remember to look out for each other at some point, because our markings are not going to help you there. Here is a good situation where, like, you saw how I took that road through the green light, but then almost immediately, one block later, you get a red bike light. You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to cut it. You got to go maybe more than 8 miles an hour, one block, just to make the green, let alone to like comfortably go through it. And that's another example of just the basic configuration that puts cyclists first. Now this is cool. Work in progress. A very clear path. Even with, wow, see, this is like a temporary structure, but it's almost better in some ways than the stuff that we have. Because look at this, it's concrete protected, so you'll never get the car over it. It's very obvious. It has a big green sign. It has arrows on both sides. It's clear which way the people should walk. Right? There's a sign that says walk this way and bike that way. And so it's clear that there's something going on there. And what's interesting is how these configurations do change from like neighborhood to neighborhood, and they're not super consistent. I guess all these guys, they can make left turns directly in the crosswalk. I think I'm allowed to go through a little red light when there's no pedestrians, because you're allowing 3 lanes of vehicles to come through with no signage or anything. So you saw that guy had his door open. You can see that when drivers are parked outside this striped buffer, the striped buffer is important. People think that the bike lane is just the green paint and that's it, and everything else, you know, doesn't matter. But there's a reason why there's I think a 3-foot buffer, and it's striped. It's a no parking. And people get confused with recorded a little bit because sometimes people will file complaints. They'll say, oh, this car was parked on the bike lane, you know, bike lane blocking, and really they're parked on the stripe. And it's a little, wait, I'm gonna go here, I think. Okay, and I'm done. That concludes this episode. Thanks for listening, for watching, and enjoying.